What's up, gamers, and welcome to another episode of the All In Podcast. I'm the League Dad, and today we've got something special for you. We've got a little mini episode with Mitchell and Kevin. Unfortunately, me and Alistair couldn't be there to record, but I'm excited about this because Mitchell and Kevin give us their thoughts on the MSI so far. So we wanted to drop this mini episode, but be sure to tune in for next week when we have kind of a full recap of the entire group stage. But for now, enjoy this. And thanks again to Kevin and Mitchell for recording this awesome episode.
Now, here's your hosts, the League Dad, Kevin, Mitchell, and Alistair.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the All In Podcast. I'm Mitchell. I'm not the League Dad. And I'm with Kevin here. And we're just doing a two-man episode today. It's kind of an, on a random Thursday, not with the usual crew. But we're here to talk about some MSI, just a mid group stage update. So right now, it's Thursday. The standings are G2 Esports is 4-0, T1 3-0, RNG 3-0, and most importantly, EG, our team, they are 2-2, 2 wins over Order, 2 losses to G2. So we're just gonna talk about them. But first, how you doing, Kevin? What's going on in life?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I've actually been watching some of the games live. Like, I usually watch the first match and then go to bed right after, and it's been fun. I think that MSI so far has been relatively interesting, but I'm hoping it gets spicy, right? We're basically through the first round robin, more or less. This is like the first half. So, we've seen some crazy stuff happen in second round robins, the infamous 0 and 10 at Worlds before and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited too. We'll see how it goes. Because definitely, it's like we've gotten our first 2 games against G2. They were both pretty bad and really weirdly close. And then now we're just hoping that we've warmed up and we can maybe take a game. So first thoughts is there's a lot of talk about. We could just talk about EG the games, and a lot of people saying like Danny is maybe choking or nervous, or even JoJo. There's also talks about how their coach was in quarantine, their drafting coach or someone who is influential. I don't know which one you want to tackle first. Talk about EG though. Go right ahead.
Yeah, well, we'll start with EG. In my mind, I think EG is definitely underperforming. Like, I'm not even saying that as a copium thing. I just think like Danny specifically is underperforming, and he's the team's like core. Impact has been playing really well. I think Inspire has also been showing up. Even JoJo, I don't even think JoJo's tilting on stage or anything. I think he's just always played like that. It's just the opponents are better. But I think it's a good thing that he's still confident, right? He's still trying to make crazy roams and tries to pressure and stuff like that. So I think JoJo's the type who's going to learn a lot. I think Danny is just completely choking. And I don't think it's like cursed or anything, or like he can't improve. I just think that like he's been playing really badly, period. Yeah. It's been really sad to watch.
Yeah, he has not been playing great at all. Just honestly, the dying in lane and like flashing late kind of stuff, and just kind of getting caught randomly. It's been pretty bad for Danny. But it's not doomed completely. I think a lot of us are willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and just let him get used to games, right? So 2 wins against Order, I mean, that's going to boost your confidence up. So hopefully going into the next week, Danny will be playing better and be more confident, less nervous. But it's definitely scary, right? Because what if he doesn't play better next week and they still advance onto the next stage, the Rumble stage or whatever? Are we going to be as confident that he can, get his confidence up when he's playing against T1 and RNG in the group as well? Hard to say. It's going to be pretty nerve wracking, honestly. But yeah. Yeah, any comments on the coach being in quarantine? I thought that was pretty interesting, especially how their game 1 draft went.
Yeah, I feel like the drafting coach being in quarantine is definitely it. Is so what people probably know by now, if you follow the podcast or just follow the scene for a while, it's like, yeah, the players do have a say, right? They definitely like have made some of the boneheaded decisions in the past. Have been players just being like, I want to play this, I think it's best, I'm going to pick Renekton 3 times in a row. That could be the coach, but I'm probably the player. And I think that like, yeah, it's a little bit copium. Like, I hope that when he comes, like, they suddenly just become so much better. I will say that the game 1 draft was atrocious. I think that they just had no idea what they wanted to do in the meta. I think that they, for the people who hadn't, like, don't have the game up right now or something, what they essentially drafted was they drafted Aatrox, which is fine, Karthus, which I actually think could be good, but then they put Rise in the mid lane, and Danny was on Samira, and Vulcan was on Nautilus. And all G2 had to do was just they just picked Anivia, and they were like, well, your whole team just got hard countered, lol. I think that was a genius pick from G2. So it's not just that EG picked badly. I think they just didn't think that far ahead. Like, no one's played Anivia in pro play in the West in a long time, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there's room. There's like so much upside, and I'm so glad that this isn't the Rumble stage. I'm glad that this isn't where it matters, and they get like 4 games to play against G2, a team that's like right now looks slightly better or much better, and they can just get free lessons because they're not gonna. They might drop 1 game to Order, but they're not gonna drop 2. And Order isn't gonna beat G2.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to say that because of the history of G2 versus wildcards.
We'll
but
see how it goes.
Order shouldn't be
yeah,
G2.
but I definitely think with that draft, the Aatrox was picked into the Anivia actually, which was kind of a letdown because mid-range sort of champion into Anivia. It was kind of silly. The Karthus is a classic counter pick to Anivia, but didn't really have the pieces around it to like make it work. But I mean, it's just kind of what you get, right? When you were first picking Rise, really weak champion, notoriously he gets outraged in a lot of mid lane matchups. I don't know. I just felt like the Rise, just like picking Rise was like, I don't know, man. I think that champion's really really nerfed. You weren't even first picking Rise when he wasn't nerfed, right? So that was strange. I do chalk that up to like maybe just kind of a YOLO draft, like saying screw it, let's just go with some power picks and see if we can roll over them. But yeah, they mentioned on the JLXP, just like harping on the draft a bit more. Maybe Danny has no idea how to play against Pyke because both his games against G2 were against Pyke, and he looked pretty uncomfortable against it. So I would be surprised in that area too. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I think that game 2 especially, like he didn't flash the pike hook, I
yeah,
believe,
level 1.
and
Yeah,
just proceeded to die right after. And like the thing that's even more concerning for me is like G2 wasn't playing perfect. They threw a huge lead. Like if G2 lost that second game against EG, you would have definitely seen a lot of European comments like, look at the gold bounties and objective bounties. They went from a 10k lead to a 2k
yeah.
lead, which is BS, by the way. That was ridiculous how quickly the gold swung.
I don't think it's totally
But
BS. They picked up 6 turrets and like a ton of
they
gold.
picked up 6 turrets, a couple
Yeah.
shutdowns, and then the Baron. So I guess it's not totally
Yeah.
BS. It is crazy that G2 just like collapsed that
Yeah.
quickly right after that play. I think the Baron call was a little sus, but that's easy to say after the fact. I'm just worried that if EG can't win games like that would have been such a huge momentum swing. Like EG is a momentum team. They're very young, so they need that confidence. So I really do hope they can learn from it and just take the next 2, please.
Yeah.
So we don't have to get into a tiebreaker with Order somehow. Like that's my nightmare scenario. I don't think it's gonna happen, but I don't want to see it.
Yeah, that would be unfortunate. I don't think it's gonna happen either. I mean, this game was really close. It's kind of a testament to how the draft breaks out, though, right? Like G2's comp is very, very messy and scrappy. So you're gonna have these situations where you're just gonna throw because you're going in for really hype plays. So it was actually pretty impressive to me that they actually came back in this game, considering EG's comp is very like pokey, stand your ground type of comp, and G2 just kept engaging or like counter engaging into it. I definitely think the complaints that you see on the internet where maybe EG should have been more patient with their poke comp, totally valid, right? They're kind of just running at G2. I mean, they're keeping their distance, but they're still running into them, right? And then they just get engaged on because they're kind of starting that up. So, yeah, like EG, I think it's not tough to be totally worried about, but I would be a little worried just on how they're not really playing their comps well when they do get the situation they're supposed to win in. And first pick Rise, obviously, kind of suspect. But I don't know. Like I think it was impressive how that inspired in Vulcan. They really turned around that Baron fight and just started snowballing and getting up to like an even gold state. So that run itself was pretty impressive by EG. Um, so what are your thoughts on? And this is a thing I think we've talked about a lot. Is being hot into a match. So right, like getting more games played in playoffs is important, right? But also the fact that
Yep.
on day one, G2 got to play Order, an easier team. obviously made a lot of mistakes and then was warm into our match against EG. I think every
Hmm.
coach and analyst would kind of agree and say that that's an advantage for G2. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do think it's an advantage. Like you saw them like pretty much just throw the early game against Order, and Order actually had a pretty good idea of how to play the game. I was kind of impressed up until the worst Baron call of the tournament. Um, thus far, I think that being hot is a big deal, and like anyone who's ever played anything competitively, whether it's sports or esports, like they know like your mentality means so much to how you play. Because like a lot of these players, even from the minor region teams, you can see like they can relatively lane, right? They can last hit, they can do that. The second their mentals get off a little, though, like you can definitely see the veteranship or just like the class of some teams and the practice they have. Those reps will come in, and that like experience will come in. Something that really bothered me too was like after G2 beat EG, the next stage it starts out with G2 versus EG
Yeah.
again, and I'm just like,
Why don't we
why
get a
is
warm up
that?
game, right? Why can't we play Order first and then go right into playing G2? I feel like we would have played better.
It seems really un. Unfair is a little bit too much, but it just seems very odd that this is how they play the games. Like EG, G2's first or EG's first game against Order came after 2 games against G2. Period. And I'm like,
Yeah,
how did you schedule it
it's.
like
I mean,
that?
I don't think it's like it's a little bit of copium, like just a little bit. But I think there's
Yeah,
also
yeah, for
real merit
sure.
to it. The schedule's kind of biased, right? I think this happened last year too. A similar situation where G2 got to play a warm up game before they played Cloud9. So or not G2, it was Mad
Hmm.
Lions or something like that. Something similar has happened in the past, and it feels unfair when these kind of things happen. Like at least let us play Order before G2 on like the next day, right? I feel like our early game wouldn't have been so bad. We looked like we entered in the game cold, which we definitely did, because Danny was getting hooked level 1. So
Yeah.
it's I completely think that like scheduling and that type of stuff is a big deal. So it should be made fair, but it wasn't. It felt like it favored G2 to an extent. So that's unfortunate. Am I gonna say that we're gonna win those games? No, but it would have been nice to be on fair playing ground, right? So we had nothing to complain about, nothing to poke holes at. Um,
Right.
so I think that all is stuff that matters. So yeah, looking forward though, I mean, what are your predictions? Do you think we can take a game off? We can take 2 games off. How is it gonna look against G2?
I think we're definitely gonna take a game off in the next 2 games. Like they've already had like close calls in the previous 2 games, especially game 2. And I mean, EG is definitely learning by the day. Like Jojo Pian's literally saying, like every scrim he's getting so much information from because he's actually playing against very good mid laners. Like when the best mid laner in your league is either like Bjergsen or Tukui, like you're not actually learning that much because they're not holistically better than you in every way,
Yeah.
right? But like Faker, Shahu, whoever he's scrimming against, probably are much better. And that probably definitely are
Yeah.
much better. So I think that they'll ramp up. Even if they don't win a single game, I think that by the time it comes to Rumble stage, even if it's an 0-4 record, I don't think it's going to be that damning of a record. So yeah, I think EG is going to be fine. Whether they'll be like a contender for finals, I think it's a little too early, unfortunately. But I hope they just get a miracle run. They just get their groove and they do well. But honestly, I think they're much better than Order. But I think they'll only get 1 game off G2
Yeah.
for this
I'm in
stage.
the same boat. I think maybe at most they'll get 1 game. I'm a little worried that we might get 0 games against G2, but that's okay, right? Because we can still advance as long as Order doesn't get 2 wins against G2. Because if that happens, we might actually not
Could you
advance.
imagine?
But hey, even if Order gets 1 game against G2, as long as we get 3, we can force a tiebreaker of some sort. I think so. Um, should be
Hmm.
fine in that area. Please, dear God, we should be fine in that area. Don't lose any games to Order. But going into the next round, I mean, if we're looking around the rest of the groups, PSG Talon not looking so hot actually, looking like okay. I think they looked terrible in their first couple of games, but they got a win. So yeah, that's not too bad, right? That's better. Makes our chances better in the Rumble stage because they'll still likely
Yeah.
to advance, is my guess. But yeah, it looks like our competition to advance to top 4 is going to be Saigon Buffalo and PSG Talon most likely, and then maybe one other team. from the other groups that I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we're still on track to hopefully getting top 4. We look good enough. We look strong enough that we can still make the top
I would
4.
actually even argue like we're like looking better than we did going into the tournament because I don't think anyone really had an idea of how PSG was going to play if they didn't watch the
Yeah.
region. Like historically, PSG honestly has been like blow for blow with some of NA's best
Yeah.
teams historically. Like they just don't get a lot of hype because no one watches. But this year, like after losing was it River
Maple.
and
Yeah, right. Yeah. All
Maple,
to
yeah.
NA.
Losing River and Maple, one to LPL, one to NA. Like they just look bad. Like they lost 13-0. If you didn't watch that first match against Red Canids,
Yeah.
like that's the Brazilian team. The Brazilian team is like tier 4. Actually a region that has had like a couple like big upsets way in the past in like 2015 and 2014, like the Kaboom and Pain Gaming memes. But like, dude, it's 2022 and they got 13-0. This isn't Valorant, guys. I actually made that meme to my friends. I'm like, guys, dude, it's a Valorant scoreline. They just got 13-0 by a Brazilian team. Wait, we're playing
Yeah.
League. Shit.
Yikes.
That's
Yeah.
huge. Honestly, PSG just looked garbage in that game. And it wasn't like just a 13-0. It was a 13-0 where like it just looked like they were lost and they didn't have any direction. We don't usually see a premier team that gets upset by a wildcard team, or they're like a tier 2 team, right?
No.
You don't see a team like that ever get destroyed though by a wildcard team. It's usually like they screw up, they lose an early game, they show some signs of life, and then just lose because of snowballing. And this didn't look like it, so I'm glad that they're not looking like a threat. Saigon Buffalo though is looking
Yeah,
decent.
they are.
Their bot lane got 5 kills into carry a Gumi Yusi. Like that's kind of crazy. There weren't even ganks involved, directly at least for those. They just literally just picked Tristana
They
and
just dumped on him.
Alistar
Yeah.
and just
Just
crapped
Goomba
on
stomped them.
Lucianami. I think
Yeah,
it
they
was.
stomped on Lucianami. They really hit on the nail the range versus melee matchup, right? If they don't engage, they just get poked down, whittled down, and eventually die. But they just engage level 1, no hesitation, flash on them. And that's how you have to play that lane, right?
Oh my god, I
Yeah, it
love it.
reminds me, it gives me like great flashbacks to like that old Misfits roster, like Ignar and Hansama with the Leona just level 1 duking it out, SKT's bot lane, and actually winning out in the laning phase. But unfortunately, unlike Misfits, they were not able to take the game. The rest of the team just kind of fell apart. But yeah, Saigon Buffaloes was looking pretty good. I think only their mid laner really just had an awful game. But everybody else looked like they're having a pretty decent game on the side of Saigon Buffalo. So that was pretty
Yeah.
hype stuff. Definitely think also, right, for T1 side, they have a lot of greenish players. So only their second international tournament for someone like Gumayushi. So yeah, I mean, probably nerves a bit for them, right? Everybody gets to have their first game against a bit of a weaker team, right? I was except obviously NA, but yeah,
And they just never
yeah,
gets
they're
that.
saying on the GLXP that it was really nice how all of the top teams got to play against like a wildcard team for their first game and warm up, and they all had rough starts. They all threw at some points of the game or fell behind at some points of the game, and were able to come back. But not NA, because honestly, we're the second seed, right? G2 is the first seed in our group, so um, I guess we don't get that luxury, which would have been nice to have.
Yeah. I mean, when we win MSI, we'll get that luxury, and if they don't give it to us, then we'll have every reason to complain.
Yeah.
But I will also say in the group with SKT, and I would say DFM, Detonation Focus Community, actually had some pretty good games. They outclassed the AZ, I believe they're the Latin American North
Yeah.
team, LLA team, and they almost beat Saigon Buffalo. Like they had to lead that whole game up until like 20 something minutes, and then they
Yeah.
threw. Not through. They got outplayed, honestly. So I think they look better than I expected. We know that if anyone remembers, they were the first time Japan got out of the group stage or got to the group
Right.
stage last year at Worlds, was it? Like it was pretty impressive, and they still look like they have the fundamentals down. But they did get outclassed by T1, like literally today. Like it was not.
Hey,
It was not pretty.
yeah.
They were trying to go blow for blow, which they did do
It
for
was
a
not
little bit, and then
bad. It
T1
was
just
not
did.
bad.
I think it was a respectable
Yeah, it
game.
was.
I think
Yeah.
both Saigon and DFM looked like they could play the game, and then AZ.
Yeah.
Did you see what their? I think their mid laner or someone posted on Twitter or
No, I
Reddit
didn't.
afterward.
When
he essentially said, "I've never been so humiliated in my
Oh
life before."
no.
And then he said, "Good games to T1. They were like the better
Oh
team or
wow.
something." Like it was, and I was like,
Rough,
"Oh
rough
man,
times.
T1 destroyed
Yeah.
them. Rough times."
Well,
Oh
I
my
mean, if
god.
you're gonna get destroyed by anybody, you might as well be Faker, right? That's never too
Yeah.
bad of a thing to have on your record. I mean, and then props to the other teams, Detonation, Focus Me, Saga, and Buffalo. I mean, it's always awesome when you can show your best against Faker and one of the better teams. So pretty cool to see.
Hmm.
And then if like you make it to the Rumble stage and you play that same way against a G2, you might actually take that game. You might actually win against G2. They have a tendency to throw
Yeah.
things. And honestly, I don't want to say it, but you might be able to beat EG with that kind of playstyle too. So definitely not a free world
Hmm.
for EG to make it to top four. Yeah. So I think the next big issue we can talk about that we haven't actually touched on at all on this podcast. We kind of glazed over it. But the ping. So everybody is playing with 35 ping to kind of accommodate that RNG can't actually fly over. They have to stay where they are due to government and quarantine issues, which is understandable, right? Like I understand that, but it was also in a weird way to accommodate for um, the fact that Chinese teams had to go to the Asia Games, right? So their summer split was condensed and their MSI schedule was kind of finicky. But then at the last moment, the Asia Games actually announced they were being postponed till later in the year. So it's been a big roller coaster of communication issues and who's right, who's wrong, is RNG being favored, stuff like that. So give me your overall thoughts on that situation, Kevin.
I would say as an initial thing, it's a little bit weird, but I do think like in a way they're definitely being favored, right? Like there are definitely teams that if let's say the Latin American North team couldn't make it, they just wouldn't make it. Um, we even have an example with Vietnam.
Yep.
For the last like almost 2 years, they just haven't made it. There are caveats to that. Vietnam is like, I looked it up. It's like 2,000 plus miles away from Shanghai, which is where the last like major tournament was held. I think it was our last MSI they missed was in Shanghai or something like
Right.
that. It was like 2,400 miles away. While currently where they're playing from, I think it's in Shanghai or Beijing, it's like 800 miles away from Korea. It's like a whole different realm of ping,
Okay.
right? For 1,600 miles. And then don't even get me started on Reykjavik in Iceland versus Vietnam. Like you can't in good faith tell me, yeah, why didn't they get offered to play remotely? Like that's just impossible. So the opportunity came up is a fact that the Chinese player base and the viewer base is like 80 to 90% of the raw number of people who are just watching the game. Nobody who's running a competitive league would just say like, let's cut out all dudes who love beer and whatever for the Super Bowl. They
Yeah.
just cannot watch. We will not host, right? Like even though you are showing favoritism, it just makes sense. It's a business product. That being said, I wanted to like really quickly break down like what I think isn't fair and what is fair. I think it isn't fair that whatever the ping solution they're offering feels higher than 35. For days 1 and 2, like every like not every, but a lot of like very respectable pros who don't just like aren't infamous for making excuses have been saying it feels more than 35 ping. It feels like 60, 70, 80, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I will say that on day 3, Vulcan in an interview with Travis Gafford said that it felt better on day 3, like quite a bit better, and he doesn't know why. But he just said like Riot hasn't communicated anything, but the ping felt better on day 3. We'll see if it's just in his head or if it's actually going to be better
Yeah.
from then
We'll
on.
see if it gets better because I definitely think that it's not just that if the ping feels higher, it's that they're experiencing packet loss, which means that
Hmm.
at certain times, unexpectedly, it'll feel like the ping is higher. So I think players, it's worse actually if you have a varying ping than if it stayed
Yeah.
at one ping at one level. So I think that's the absolute worst to play again on is when it's 35 ping sometimes, 60 ping at other times, and it goes back and forth. Um, so I hope that whatever it is, maybe that's fixed, the packet loss, the inconsistency. Whether it actually is 35 ping though, I mean, this is like some weird Riot rocket science, right? They're creating artificial lag and ping to um,
Yep.
yeah, to accommodate for this strange situation. Yeah, I will also say that yeah, the favoritism towards RNG is blatant. I don't think anybody can argue that it's not favoritism, but at the same
Yep.
time, I think similar favoritism would be showed for the other major regions. And that's just how it is. I think if you're a major region, there's already favoritism in how you're titled and named. You're gonna get favoritism if you're a major region versus Vietnam, which is called a minor region, literally. So
hmm
I don't mind it, honestly. I would like to kind of, since this is the reality we live in, I think the mentality that we should try and spread and share is, hey, at least we're able to help out LPL, right? They are physically not able to come because of their government and problems with COVID. So it's nice that we were able to create a situation where we can help out one of our regions to actually play. Because at the end of the day, it's about competitive integrity and playing all with each other, right? So
hmm
I'm glad that they're able to come. Stuff like complaints about maybe there's not proper refereeing, right? Maybe there's not proper mic or camera setups or being able to view RNG players. I think all that stuff is actually quite valid.
hmm
If you, I don't know exactly how the setup is or how cheat proof it is, but whatever it should be, whatever precautions need to be taken to ensure that there's no cheating involved, I think should be enabled for all the teams. So if there
Yep.
are problems in that area, I think the complaints are valid, but I just don't know if RNG is actually thoroughly being monitored. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I can give some insight into that because I both peruse a little bit of Chinese stuff and also just like they're essentially on a similar setup to what they did in playoffs because they had to play remotely anyways during playoffs for LPL. Uh, there is not a referee in the room because of quarantine laws and like just like how hard it is to just get people to a facility. There is a camera, as you can see during like champ select, like there is a camera and recordings of it. But during the game, I think is to prevent ping. I don't know why. It might be a Riot side decision not to broadcast it because like we literally see them as the camera in the room post game and pre game. So the technology is there and the cameras are set up. Riot put out a statement yesterday, actually, an official statement saying that they acknowledged like there was concerns about that, and so they explained why the referees couldn't show up because of the quarantine laws. They do have mics hooked up all the way across the room, so any kind of cheating, whether it be through talking or whatever, like trying to convey information, is not possible there. They also have cameras set up in the
Okay.
room. The reason why RG has that but not the headphones on is because they have this set up for LPL regularly, and so both teams were playing without like white noise mics or anything. And there's no reason RNG their facility would have like a white noise stage headphone thing like just on hand,
Yeah.
right? Because they weren't ready for this, and Riot just apparently cannot deliver it. So I do hope by Rumble stage they could get those because honestly, it's a bad optic. I don't, guys. RNG is not cheating against Istanbul Wildcats and Red Canids. Like if you trust Twitch chat or trust like Reddit, like you would think like they're just like known cheaters. But this team has won MSI
Yeah.
twice. They're like a storied franchise. If they tried to cheat, like especially with the microphones and the cameras recording them, like it wouldn't just be a shame for RNG, it would be a whole shame to the LPL. And that is not worth MSI. I don't think RNG cares that much about
I don't
MSI.
think even the players would audit to it, right? You have players that on this team that have been playing for a really, really long time. I don't think any of them would care to win any title that has cheating involved, right? I mean, none of us know these players, but I imagine most competitive
It's
players
true.
have that within themselves, that little voice saying like, I'm only gonna win if it's worth something, and cheating usually makes it not worth
hmm
that much. But I mean, with all that said, right? RNG is most definitely probably not cheating, so it's good to break it out that information in our podcast, right? Sort of break down the situation. Hey, they're really not probably cheating. The situation is probably as unfortunate as it might be, as fair as it can be for the most part. Because even with the Asia Games being pushed back, RNG still can't travel due to government issues. So 35 ping, I think, was an inevitability. Um, but what are your thoughts on the idea that, well, this MSI is always going to have an asterisk on it, right? With the ping, with RNG not being around, with
Mm.
other weird stuff that's kind of going on with MSI, right? Like the whole mask thing, right? Well, that was kind of small, but that was pretty weird, right? It's not in the rule books.
Yeah,
Everybody complained on
it's
Twitter.
not.
They started telling everybody, right? Like, there's some weird stuff going on with Riot and MSI. Like, I definitely think it's gonna leave a lot of people with some questions and some strange sentiments once MSI is over.
Yeah, my thoughts are that one asterisk. There's definitely going to be an asterisk on this. Like even if RNG or SKT win, there's going to be asterisk, right? Because there's just a weird environment for it. But the argument that I just feel like is kind of disingenuous whenever I see this argument come is like no one just acknowledges that the asterisk would be bigger if LPL didn't
Yeah,
come. They're literally the reigning MSI champions and world champions, and they've won half of the MSIs or more.
I've won a lot. Yeah.
It is impossible to argue to me, at least to me. Sorry, impossible is too strong to say like, yeah, it's better off if we just didn't have RNG and we had perfect ping. Yeah, that would be a perfect tournament. I mean, again, to me, that would actually be better for NA because that means that we could get to finals. We just have to be G2. That's literally
Yeah.
it, right? Well, okay, we might get picked into SKT, but we could still ostensibly get top 3 at the
Yeah.
tournament in terms of like power ranking,
Yeah.
right? But it's an empty win. I don't think SKT like honestly, I don't think SKT would be happy to win MSI and not have like beating G2 would be nice, but they didn't beat RNG. Like they would just always be like, RNG could have beat you. It would be just another asterisk. And as, uh, as for this, I also had a theory. I think the Riot's got their like tier 2 team on this MSI. Honestly,
Interesting.
they didn't bring flowers in. I don't think it's that important. They didn't bring flowers and they didn't communicate with their own teams to set up the tournament. The audio of the crowd has been like delayed. Like someone that was like, this is kind of like Wii Golf or Wii Bowling, where like you do something, there's like a 2-second delay, and then you hear clapping in the background. Like it's extremely scuffed. Like I cannot believe that this wasn't test. Like syncing on your mic on your stream quality is something that like people on like XLNC tournaments do correctly. And
Hey,
like
yes, we do.
I'm
Yes.
just saying it should be basics, right? In a dress rehearsal you can see if it's working or not. I don't know what they're doing, but it seems like Riot's not trying their hardest with MSI, at least in to how it looks to the viewer. The last thing I wanted to mention is like, dude, T1 has so many asterisks during their run, and we're still lauding. Like, are we just showing favoritism? Because I like T1, right? They're a legacy org from StarCraft. They are one of the best esports orgs of all, or SKT is at least
Yeah.
of all time, right? And they're like one of the grandfathers of esports. But like, where was all the complaints about like T1, who magically everyone got COVID after the onstage games, after the finals? They came back and all of them except for Gumi UC test positive. No one cares about that. Gen G just literally sending in sub rosters 2 games in a row
Yeah.
during the regular season. Yeah, it's an undefeated run, but no one's like really seriously giving asterisks to that. I I just feel like I don't think it's RNG's fault. I don't think Riot did it perfectly, but I don't think they had a lot of options. And it's like it's just an imperfect solution during trying times. It's not like RNG was like, yeah, we want to play remote, so do this for us. They said we don't want to play MSI. Just do your stupid tournament without us.
Yeah. I
And
definitely think
Riot forced
all
them.
the parties pretty much. It seems like everybody tried their best to really make it work.
Yeah.
For Riot, I would say that they definitely tried their best. You can tell they tried their best, but they didn't necessarily execute it the greatest. Definitely the fact that I think the low communication about the ping issues, right? We had maybe like 5, 6 interviews from pro players all saying the ping felt higher, and we didn't actually ever get a comment from Riot. There wasn't ever a direct comment about that ping, the fact that it felt higher than 35 ping. They never addressed it, right? The weird stuff with the you have to wear a mask even though it's not in the rule book sort of stuff. So I think all that stuff they really need to fix, not do again, because it's gonna break trust between your players, right? Like players are already kind of shifty with this whole situation with the 35 ping and the remote play for RNG, but pulling stuff like, telling them to wear masks when they don't have to necessarily, or even, just having weird ping where it feels like there's packet loss. That kind of stuff is unfortunate. I did think it was kind of funny that Faker said that the ping was going to determine what the meta was, how good champions are, and I think that's kind of reflected in some drafts to an extent, where their first game they decided to pick a bunch of point and click with like Vi and TF, and even Lucian Nami is mostly point and click, right? So I thought that was pretty funny. I mean, this is a little bit of copium, but I would say high APM skill shot champions would be harder on high ping, right? So stuff like Ezreal, Zoe, which we picked, definitely maybe harder to execute on for EG. So I think that maybe
We also picked GP, which is like crazy to me. Like, if ping is actually an issue, picking GP is like the last thing I want to pick because there's so many like, if you're doing the barrels correctly, there are so many like frame perfect things you basically need to execute to like
yeah.
hit other pros with. I mean, maybe it also means the ping isn't actually that bad if we're like actually choosing the stuff and like comfortable with it. But I do agree, like, why do we keep prioritizing Ezreal when we need to be basically perfect with Ezreal on stage?
Yeah, and what's been interesting is just to call out Alistair, there has been no Jinx at all shown up. I think has there been a little bit of Jinx? I'm not sure, but
I don't recall
I
a single
don't.
Jinx pick.
Yeah,
Definitely not a single Jinx pick from our
yeah.
teams. And in terms of pick ban, zero Jinx
Zero,
picks.
yep, zero Jinx picks this tournament so far. I think. There might have been a
Yep, I'm looking at
ban.
it
No,
right
there's
now.
one ban. One Jinx ban.
There's one
One
ban.
Jinx ban. So,
Who was it against?
let's see. Let's click it. Let's click the one Jinx game here. It is loading. Never mind. It's just not showing up. No, I don't know.
Oh well, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it could have been against Danny because he has that famous play, but
true. But yeah, I
I
think
don't
it's
know.
funny how the little bit of HP knocked off, right? Changed everybody's perception. Because I bet you Jinx is not that bad of a pick at all. I bet you could throw Jinx in, maybe dies a little more in lane or falls a bit more behind in lane, but will still do similar things. So I still think Jinx is a strong pick, but definitely not as strong as it used to be, and probably a lot weaker in the
Hmm.
pros' minds. So I think that was interesting. A good call out from our last podcast. Any other notable worthy picks that you thought were interesting? I think it's exciting that Wukong and Pyke are pretty high meta right now, which is cool.
Yeah, I think Wukong and Pike for sure. Since you already covered it, I think they're really interesting picks. I'm glad that we did see some Karthus, even though it's 0-2 right now. I think it is a strong
Yeah,
pick. Like watching that first clear at like 250, whatever, is busted. Like he's so strong, but I don't think the best teams have picked it up yet. So like you're just not picking up wins on it. Uh, Other than that, I wanted to call out Lucian. I think Lucian has been highly
oh yeah,
prioritized by some teams. Gala got a pentakill
yeah.
on it. Oh, I wanted to mention this because it's a little drama filled. Uh, it was the quietest pentakill I've ever heard in my life. Like there was no cheers. He just gets the pentakill and it's just silent. And I was like,
That's
okay,
Korea.
guys, come
Yep,
on.
that is Korea.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah, like come on. I know RNG's like got a drama around it right now because of the ping stuff, but like we can't just like. I remember a few years ago there was like complaints about the Chinese audience not cheering as loudly for the Koreans, which was true, right? But they still cheered. This was like it's not like we couldn't hear the audience. Every like when Red Canids got first blood, they was like definitely cheering that
Yeah.
audience. And then the pentakill happened, it was literally muted. So maybe the sound mixer mix messed up, but like it is very strange. And I don't want to delve into too much, but it looks like this is a very personal tournament right now in terms of like people are upset and for good reason, but like I don't think any one person is to blame. Like everyone just tried their best. It's an imperfect solution.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I thought that's pretty funny stuff, and
It was
yeah, that's pretty
hilarious.
funny. I actually think that's kind of stuff is powerful though, right? Like the crowd definitely is the sixth player on a team sometimes, and
Hmm.
like it's true. Emotion, personalities, they're very big in League of Legends. They play a big part in the quality of a team play. But yeah, I thought that we saw a good amount of Tristana still. That was cool, right? Haven't been seeing her much. She got buffed. Um, I definitely think the priority on the Twisted Fate, it's gotten 8 bans and 4 picks. Definitely, I don't know. Seems a little high to me. That champion seems pretty trash. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. But I feel like Twisted Fate is turbo bad, but seeing a lot of priority right now.
I haven't seen a single team use it like impressively. I think it must be a scrim thing. I think that it's just probably dominating scrims, snowballing, and people are like, oh, FF, it's too strong.
Yeah.
And so that's why they're playing it. But like on stage, these guys just aren't making the same TPs they would. Like some of these guys are picking TF and just not ulting or ulting terribly. So, and also because Silas is meta or at least usable now. Like again, I think Silas is a great matchup into TF.
Yeah, I think so too. I think some people don't think it's that great, but like, 'cause stealing the ulti, right, is kind of like situational. But you get to just run a Twisted
Yeah.
Fate, right? Silas can just run at him and beat him up, and Twisted Fate's got one stun and then just has to run away. So, funny
Hmm.
last level couple thing on champions and meta and stuff. Nautilus, one of the most picked support so far, and one of the most picked supports in NA at least. Has a 1-9 record, so 10% win rate right now. Not doing too hot, which is pretty interesting. What are your thoughts on that? I feel like it must just be a lot of weaker teams picking it up. Which let me see. Yeah, it is a lot of weaker teams picking it up, playing against better teams. But I think it's pretty
Yeah.
interesting that Nautilus has done so badly.
I think it's just like I think that whenever you're in a position where you see whatchamacallit, you're in a position you see like SKT or G2 or some scary team on the other end, right? You don't want to pick an enchanter because frankly, I think NA is just bad at it. Like at least Vulcan in this case like doesn't play Karma that
Yeah.
well. Because like to be fair, Karma hasn't been picked that much, but even Nami, right? Like we're just not
Renata.
picking like or like Renata or Nami, like characters that were meta elsewhere in the world too. And even if we did pick it sometimes in the regular season, we were just bad at it. So they want to pick Nautilus because he's the most comfortable. He gets through pick ban every time because he's not great. He can do his job. Like we saw Core JJ sometimes get good plays off. I know that some of the RNG or Ming has also played it once or twice, but like it's extremely squishy. Like I can't wait for the durability buffs because like this character doesn't look like a tank. He just gets blown up all the time, and he's just chain feeding. So I think he's a kind of a bait pick, but he's kind of a forced bait pick. Like you have no choice. You're just they're too not confident to pick Nami, Karma, Lulu, Renata, like any of the range enchanters because they know they're gonna get Dovin upon. They know they're gonna get outlaned, or at least they might fear that they're going to get outlaned, right? There's not enough
Yeah.
confidence. So I hope that they learn it, but it's hard to teach an old dog new
But
tricks.
there was one game. It was I think it was an order game. He was like
Mm-hmm.
0-8 and something on the Nautilus. I was like, damn, dude, that is a rough one. Let's see. Yeah,
Uh,
Corporal 0-8 and 1 who's EG versus Order. This was a rough game for a Nautilus. I was laughing my ass off during this one. Oh, this is the same game that
yeah.
Vulcan went to the space. He went to Sky. Uh,
The Leona
yeah,
to
the Leona,
space thing.
Leona had a hot date with the
what a
moon. Yes.
what a funny thing to see. This game is so
This
jank.
game is
I love
freaking
it.
hilarious. Yeah. Any last things you want to talk about? I guess we can comment a bit on the durability patch. So, durability
Yeah.
patch came out. Basically, it's this massive patch. It's going to come out 12.10. So about 2 weeks from today, honestly. Um, yeah, it's gonna basically everybody gets a lot tankier. Healing is reduced by a lot. Percent penetration on most items is reduced as well. And overall, everybody's going to be a bit tankier and do a bit less damage with higher base stats. We'll probably go into a lot more depth when we have the league data and Alistair back, but we can give our brief thoughts. Do you like it? Any
Yeah.
standout thing you want to talk about really quickly, and then yeah, we can go from there.
Yeah, I think I like it. I think that we've been complaining for a long time, especially ARAM players. Like ARAM is where it's most visible how much more damage has been in the game, just patch to patch. It, I think that it was about time. I'm so glad that they did something so dramatic, I guess, so extreme, because it's not going to be balanced. I'm not saying like we're going to come out like, wow, we're in a perfectly balanced state. Like the game is pretty balanced. Like the viable characters are good, and like there's a good mix of them, right? But it just feels awful to like certain characters just get blown up immediately. Like Nautilus doesn't feel tanky. He used to be like a mega tank. Like Mundo is
Yeah.
unplayable. He just gets blown up, right?
Alistair, even
I think
under
this,
ulti, melts. That guy disappears with his ulti on. We were watching at MSI. Alistair with his ulti on and everything just completely disappears so fast. Yeah.
yeah, it's just absurd. Like Alistair's literally like a base, like anywhere from like 50 to 70, I think, just flat damage, or not flat, but like a percent damage
Yeah,
reduction,
percent
right?
damage.
So it's like, if that's getting blown up, like we have a massive problem in the game. Like it's not that the game isn't balanced; it's just it's unfun. And again, there's another side of the pendulum where everyone just never dies, right? And the game just goes on forever. But I think Riot's gonna send balance changes in. They're gonna like balance Vayne or whatever characters like rise up to the top, right? I think AD carries will finally become like the kings again, if they're kept at this current power level because they have survivability. They're going to be strong. Enchanters are going to be even more giga
Yes, they
busted
are.
because they won't get blown up. And then they're going to need to do something with assassins and finally fix how lethality interacts with the game, which I think things we've been just yelling at Riot for, like, do come up, and they do come out. So I'm giving them credit. I don't think it's going to be balanced, but it's almost like a new game, which I'm super excited for.
Yeah, I think honestly we've been needing it. We need this, right? I think we've been kind of dying from this preseason basically not having any major changes, right? Every preseason we get major changes, and if Riot hadn't conditioned us to need those major changes, maybe it'd be fine. But we've been conditioned, and not getting major changes over this preseason, I think, has definitely left a lot of players feeling like, season 12 is not that different from the previous season. It feels a lot of the same stuff. So I think that's exciting. I would also like to say that AD carries and enchanters I think will be quite good in pro play, but so will honestly be high CC tanks, right? So Nautilus just being tankier at a baseline, he can run around with a lot less gold and be a lot more effective. So I think what we might expect to be good after this patch might not be so expected, because there's actually a school of thought where you could think, even early game champions, right? Stuff like Renekton and Lee Sin, who get to abuse the early game kits with higher stats, can maybe get even bigger advantages to cut people off of XP because of how much more valuable experience will be. So a lot of interesting stuff this new durability patch can bring. And then
Hmm.
my first foremost thing that I think is gonna be broken is gonna be those really high sustain lifesteal fighters. Aurelia, Jax, Kayn, Fiora. God, Kayn is gonna be the most unkillable champion in the game. I am calling it right here, right now. First champion that comes out after durability patch, if you want to abuse Elo, is gonna be Kayn in the jungle. Go red Kayn. He'll
Hmm.
just never die. Is my guess right now.
They're never gonna let Kane be meta for more than like a couple weeks though. They
Yeah,
hate Kane. Like they hate the way he plays. They designed him poorly. Like he's very cool in concept and I love playing him, but every time he's viable, he gets nuked. He never gets viability for longer than a
that
month.
is true. He doesn't, especially for competitive. I'm pretty sure Riot doesn't want that in competitive at all, ever.
Hmm.
But yeah, any last thoughts you want to talk about? Do you want to bring up rosters or save it for League Dad and Alistair? Or I don't know where you want to go with this. I'm just talking now.
We can briefly mention because I think some of these roster changes will just kind of be lost to time by next
Sure.
week, and we'll just have more exciting stuff to talk about like Rumble stage. Briefly, I want to talk about Jensen is officially announced on C9. We already broke this news, or not broke, but we already talked about this news last week. And the other big one in my mind is that both Bo, who we were talking about, who was supposed to be on like TSM, but something fell through, probably visas, and Haru, who used to be on the Samsung Galaxy roster and also just Samsung in
Yep.
general as a jungler. Both junglers have been signed to Vitality, the EU super team, with Bo being the sub until he gets his visa figured out for EU. So Bo seems to be the starter, but they wanted Haru, I guess, which means Selfmade is gone. And he was a pretty good as far as that crap show of a roster
Yeah.
was. I thought he was
I thought he
fine.
played pretty
So
well.
it's very strange to me. They hired two more junglers to replace their own jungler. I, good for them. They could be a super team with Bo if he gets his visa in time, but
Uh,
it's so
I
strange.
am not excited. I wonder like how much of self-made was clashing with his solo laners, right? Basically, Alfari self-made perks all want to be the head cooks in the kitchen, right? When you look at those three guys.
Hmm.
So I wonder if they get Haru or Bo or their jungler just to be their bitch. Just do whatever I want the solo laners to do. Like, be good at the
Right.
game, but also just do what we say. So I feel bad actually if that's the case for Haru, because honestly, he's never really had that breakout time performance in his life. I mean, he won Worlds while basically just being a sub for Ambition the entire tournament, right? So um, we'll see how it goes. Um, yeah, I think the Jensen officially signed. Did you catch the release video? The release video was pretty funny.
I did. I
I thought that
did.
was pretty
I
funny.
like that they brought back
Yep.
Sneaky for. I honestly I didn't know Sneaky was still part of the org. If he is, I don't know, but he showed up in the vid. I was like, what?
Yeah. The
Are they signing Sneaky?
I like it. It was funny. It's like those Marvel cameos, right? They brought back Sneaky as a
Oh yeah.
throwback, right? To announce their next
Hmm.
movie, their next signing, Jensen. I like it. I like it. Honestly, the direction they went, with the music and everything too, and this whole villain sort of theme, great for NA. Jensen has always been the villain of North America, to Bjergsen being like
Hmm.
the good kid, the good guy, the nice guy. So it's nice to have him back. And honestly, hot take, because I mean I do think JoJo's good, but like if Jensen has not fallen off at all from last year, which I don't think he has because he's been playing a lot of champs queue, I think Jensen's going to come in and immediately be the best mid laner. There's just Bjergsen looking a lot weaker, and Jensen was actually looking really good last year, especially at Worlds. He looked so good at Worlds last year. So I'm expecting Jensen to come in and just be immediately top 1, 2, 3, like just without a doubt. So that's gonna be exciting for the C9 roster. TSM also maybe signing Maple, hasn't been confirmed yet, but not much has changed in
Mhm.
that area. And I think that's gonna do it for us, right? Wrap it up. Anything else?
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So yeah, we're gonna end it out here. What does the League Dad say? Try not to be too toxic. We'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.
Peace.
Okay.